Thank you all for coming out Sunday night in Spanish for Gita. Invite your comments, correspondence, and feedback. My email is utahkrishnas@gmail.com. Everything is inspired by the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, who is the founder and chair of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Om Aganat Simarandasya Ganagana Salakya Chaksurin Militam Yana Tashmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stavitam Yana Bhutare Swayam Rupa Karamayam Darati Swaha Parantikam. Today we'd like to talk to you about loving unconditionally. True loving is like light. Light doesn't shine on some and not others. It's equally there for all. True love, like true light, does not discriminate. The great painter Vincent Van Gogh said, "Those who love much, do much, accomplish much. Whatever is done by them is done well." Love is the best and noblest thing in the human heart, especially when it is tested as gold is tested by fire. Happy is he or she who has loved much, and although they may have wavered and doubted along the way, they have kept the divine spark alive and returned to that which was in the beginning and ever shall be. The epic Ramayana, the story of Lord Ram, written by the sage Valmiki, is a celebration of love. The hero, Lord Ram, an avatar of Krishna, exhibited unblemished love all around for his father, unblemished love for his wife Sita, unblemished love for his brothers Lakshman, Bharat. He loved all those close to him, even Kaikeyi, who betrayed him. The interesting thing is that he did not draw a line around those with whom he had a bodily connection. He did not draw a line around his family members. His love, like light, expanded unlimitedly, exponentially. It is said of the virtuous Ram, he will be a perfect ruler. He has compassion, a sense of justice, courage, and he makes no distinctions between living beings, old or young, prince or peasant, animal or human. He has the same consideration for every living being in courage, valor, and all the qualities. None are equal to Lord Sri Ramachandra. Would you agree with me? It's easy to love people that are like us, look like us, dress like us, worship like us. Doesn't take a lot of effort, does it? But what about people who are different from us? People who we don't understand, with whom we don't agree. As far as we're concerned, they're making poor choices. It's easy to size them up from the exterior, put them in a box, and think, they're not for me, they're off, they're odd. I'm going to keep my distance from them. Krishna, or God's love, is not like that. God's love is not exclusive, it is inclusive. It doesn't exclude people that are different, it doesn't write people off because they're not where they should be in life. Krishna's love does not ignore someone because they're not meeting our standards. Unconditional love says, I'm going to love you even if I don't agree with you. I may not agree with your lifestyle, your doctrine, how you're raising your children, the friends you're choosing, but I know this, that you are made in the image of Almighty God. I'm not called to judge you. I'm called to love you. Every person is on a journey. Where they are right now is not where they're going to end up. They're not a finished product. We're all on the potter's wheel. Vedaham samadhitani vartamani vavishani chabudani mam tu veda nakashana. Krishna tells Arjuna that I not only see where people are at the present, but I see throughout all of their past lives, and I also see of what they are capable in the future. Krishna blesses those who represent him by reaching out in unconditional love for their fellow living beings. Once in a letter to one of his disciples named Hansaduta, Prabhupada wrote, "With great pleasure I have noted your unbounded enthusiasm to carry out this great mission of spreading the light and love of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in this dark material world. That is the only requirement. for successfully completing the perfection of the living condition, that you should unconditionally reflect the mercy emanating from the lotus feet of the Lord. A remarkable event took place over 30 years ago in the Gulf of Mexico. Daniel Dorr was working on an oil rig when suddenly it began to wobble. And before long, it tipped over to one side and crashed into the water. Daniel found himself trapped inside a room on the rig. And as the rig sank deeper and deeper into the sea, the lights went out. It was pitch black. Daniel was trapped. The room he was in began filling with water. He was thrashing about in the darkness. That time he made a life-saving discovery. A huge air bubble was forming in a corner of the room. He kept his head inside that bubble of air and prayed that someone would come down and rescue him. As he prayed, he says later that he felt God's presence there with him for those 22 hours. That presence comforted Daryl. On one level, he knew that when the oxygen ran out, the bubble was going to no longer be a life support system. And soon he would be dead. And just the last minute, he saw a little tiny star of light shimmering above him in the pitch black water. After 22 hours, was it real or was it a hallucination? He squinted his eyes. As he did so, the light seemed to grow brighter. He squinted again. He wasn't hallucinating. The light was real. It was coming from the helmet of a diver who was coming down into the darkness to rescue him. His long nightmare was over. He was saved. Instead of writing people out because they're too deeply in the darkness, too low, too far gone, Krishna is pleased when we, like that deep sea diver and rescuer, reach down to help others. Nacha tajman manusheshu kastya me priya bhavita nacha me tajmat anya priyataro bhuvi. There are none more priya, more dear to me, nacha tajman manusheshu, than those who reach out to their fellow living beings with light in the darkness. But too often, instead of doing that, we judge people for where they are today. We think, I'm not going to associate with them. They're a mess. They're finished. Their best days are behind them. They've made too many mistakes. No. Krishna can use you to plant seeds in their heart. Your love, your friendship, your encouraging words may be part of the plan that Krishna has designed for their life. Krishna is counting on you to make a difference. Don't have a holier than thou attitude. Take off the judgmental glasses. If not for the grace of the Lord, you could be right where they are. The same things that we're tempted to be judgmental and critical about, if not for God's goodness, we could be struggling with it as well. If you had walked in their shoes, been raised in their family, fought the battles that they fought, you would understand why they are the way they are. In the areas that you're strong, they just don't happen to be strong. But that's the mercy of Krishna on your life. That's your opportunity. Krishna gave you strength so that you could then share it with others. And when we show this unconditional love, don't expect people to respond right away. Don't expect to get any immediate indicators that you're doing any good, that you're perking them up. They may keep on ignoring you. They may keep on making bad choices. But here's the key. The seeds never die. Researchers found seeds long ago that were over 4,000 years old. They've been sealed in an airtight coffin. And when they planted that seed, much to their amazement, it took root and grew. It was still alive 4,000 years later. In the same way, the seeds that you plant of hope, mercy, encouragement, they never die. may not look like it's doing any good. The reason they're not growing is because the soil of their heart is rocky and hard, and that seed at the present moment cannot take root. But the good news is the seed is still alive, and at the right time, Krishna or God will soften their heart, loosen up the soil, and the seed that you've sown will take root and bring a harvest. Can I tell you that nothing you've been doing has been wasted? Every time you show love, you're sowing those seeds. But sometimes we think we have to get down there, confront people, intervene. We have to convince them. We have to tell them what they're doing wrong. Make sure they feel really guilty about themselves. No. The Paramatma, the Lord within the heart, He's the one that does the convincing. It's not our job to change people or to convince them. Our job is just to keep sowing those seeds, sowing unconditional love. And at the right time, the super sow will cause them to come to light. In London, during the reign of Queen Anne in the 18th century, there were few or no streetlights. A law was passed requiring everyone whose property fronted on a street or alley to hang out a light from 6 to 11 in the winter evening months between September until March. It was declared that everybody was responsible for the safety of their neighbors from the dangers of the night. A man with a lantern went about the streets crying, "Hang out your lights, hang out your lights, hang out your lights." That's God's or Krishna's call to us today. Hang out your lights. Another believer used this analogy. He said that in his basement, some potatoes had begun to sprout, even though they were in the darkest corner of the room. How had they obtained enough light, he wondered. And then he noticed a copper kettle hanging on a wall opposite a small window. Soon he deduced that the sunshine coming in the window reflected just enough light over into the dark corner where the potatoes lay in order to allow them to sprout. That's our job as devotees. We need to reflect enough light from Krishna or God that we can bring some cheer into the darkest corner of people's hearts. In the Bhagavad Gita, 15 chapter 12 verse, Krishna talks about light. Yada ditya gatam tejo jagat pashyate kiram yaksham damsi yakshokto tat tejo vidimarmakam. Krishna says to Arjuna, I am the splendor of the sun, which dissipates the darkness of the whole world. And the splendor of the moon and the splendor of the fire are also from me. Our spiritual master Prabhupada writes in the purport, everyone sees the sun, fire, moon, electricity. One should simply try to understand that the splendor of the sun, the splendor of the moon, and the splendor of electricity or fire are coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The living entities are essentially parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord. He is asking them, one, to absorb His light by loving ourselves, two, to reflect His light and love upon others. The author of that great epic Ramayana, Valmiki himself, had been a loveless man, a criminal named Ratnakara. In order to maintain his family, he robbed people by the roadside until one day a saint named Narada Muni came by. Narada Muni didn't see him as he was at present. He saw of what he was capable. And he asked him, you're committing so many crimes to maintain your family members. You only eat little rice, dal, and a chapati every day, but they're living in a big house, eating gourmet food. Why don't you ask them that inasmuch as they're enjoying the fruits of your sins, would they not be willing to share the negative results? Valmiki went. Shortly thereafter, he came back, all hung down, slumped, depressed. He said he asked his wife if she would share some of his karma. She said, you've chosen your profession. I didn't choose it for you. It's all on you. He said he asked his 16-year-old son, for whom he just gave him the reins of a brand new chariot, if he would accept part of his karma, Son said, no way, Jose. He asked his daughter, for whom he just spent 10,000 rupees on her wedding, if she would accept some portion of his karma. She said, not me. You're on your own. And Valmiki said, what am I to do? Narada said, chant the names of Ram. Ram, Ram. Not only will that destroy all the sins in your heart, but it will create in you unlimited joy and insight and creativity. The problem was that he'd been associated with death and pain and suffering for so long, he couldn't get the name Ram out of his mouth. Then Narada Muni said, since you're really sort of been a devotee of Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, and his nickname is Mara, why don't you chant Mara? Valmiki said, well, I could do that, but I don't know what good it'll do. Narada said, just try it. I think you'll be pleased with the results. Mara, Mara, Mara. Death, Mara, Mara, Mara. Pain, Mara, Mara, Mara. Suffering, Mara, Mara, Mara. Robbery, Mara, Mara, Mara. Torture, Mara, Mara, Ram, Ram, Ram. Ram, 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 Ram. And this happened back in the Satyuga age when people lived much longer than today. For literally thousands of years, he sat down in ecstasy, chanting the holy name, Ram, Ram, Ram. So long was he there that a huge anthill formed around where he was sitting in silent meditation. Many thousands of years later, Narada Muni happened to be passing by. He recognized the place. He remembered the robber that he met. He said, I wonder what happened to him. And then he heard from inside this anthill, Ram, Ram, Ram. He said, Valmiki, is that you? Valmiki emerged, and since then, his name changed from Ratnagari to Valmiki, which means one who emerged from an anthill, overflowing with joy and having cleansed himself of all of his sins, experiencing joy and bliss. And that Valmiki went on to write the whole epic of the Ramayana. He's known as Adi Kavi, the first and greatest Sanskrit poet of all. Martin Luther asked this question: can a rock that has been in the warmth and heat of the sun all day not fail to give out warmth and heat at night? Similarly, can a devotee who has lived in the sunlight of Krishna's name, form, paraphernalia, pastimes, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, not fail to give out warmth and unconditional love? The answer is no. But you have to put first things first. You don't say to others, you start loving each other, you be nice, you make it up, you cooperate. No, first we need to live in the sunlight of Krishna's love. We need to bask and soak and sunbathe in the sunlight of Krishna's compassion. We need to first absorb Krishna's light and love into us, and then we start to give off the love. May your love shine on us today, Krishna, so that there will be peace in our family and on the entire earth. As love, like light, should be inclusive, not exclusive. Love should be equally distributed, not rationed. Love should be merciful, not judgmental. Love should be understanding, not critical. Love should restore, not condemn. Love should accept, not reject. If it weren't for Krishna's love and mercy as reflected through Narada Muni, his guru, Valmiki would have never written the Ramayana. The story of the virtuous Ram would never have been told. It is said that love never fails. Why? Because when you're showing love, you're showing God. When you're merciful, understanding, accepting, that heals, that restores, that brings new life. Now, our part as devotees is to keep showing that unconditional love. Not, I'll love you if you agree with me. No, our attitude should be, if you have good morals or if you have no morals, I'm still going to love you. If you're clean and sober, or if you're strung out and addicted, I'm still going to love you. If you're gay or straight, Republican or Democrat, black or white, Muslim or Christian, believer or atheist, doesn't matter. I'm still going to love you. It is said that if you have love for one another, all men will know that you're on the path of light. What would this world be like if instead of judging people, we'd really start loving them? So what if they don't look like you? They're not supposed to. Krishna made unlimited variety. That's what makes everything fun and interesting. Most of the wars and criticism that goes on is because a certain segment of people want everyone else to be just like them, to worship just like them, to think just like them. If that were to happen, we'd probably all want to kill ourselves out of boredom. Everybody's just on a different journey, that's all. Maybe they're not where they should be in life right now. That's okay. None of us are a finished product. Raise your hand if you're a finished product. We can agree with that. Perhaps they don't worship like you. They may come from a different denomination, a different culture. Maybe they have a different faith, or maybe they have no faith. That's okay. Don't shut them out. Krishna is a God of all living beings. The 15th chapter, 15th verse of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Sarvasya chaham ridi shani vishto matashmitir jnanam apodanam cha. He says, I am in the hearts of all living beings. He doesn't say I'm in the hearts of the Hindus. He doesn't say I'm in the hearts of the human beings. He says, I am in the hearts of all living beings. Our God is a God of the whole earth. He's a God of all living beings. He's not just a God for whites or a God for blacks or for Mexicans or Koreans. He's not even exclusively a God for human beings. Aham Brija Pradapita. Krishna says, I am the seed-giving Father of all living beings. He's like the sun. There's no such thing as an Eastern sun or a Western sun, a Christian sun, a Muslim sun, a Jewish sun, an American sun, or an Australian sun. The sun is the sun, above those designations. But so many times we have this narrow view of God. We have our little circle of what we believe and who we think is right and exclude everyone else. We point out their faults, what they're doing wrong, where we don't agree. We focus on the things that separate us. But the longer I live, the more I realize that Krishna's circle is wide enough. His mercy extends to include every living being. And when we get to the spiritual world, we're going to be surprised at who we find there. I venture to guess that some people are going to be really surprised that you're there too. I heard someone say that thinking your religion is the only true religion is like filling your bathtub with water and calling it the Pacific Ocean. Can I tell you, we're all missing it somewhere? Because love is bigger than a theological difference. It's bigger than what church you belong to. It's bigger than what faith you practice. It's bigger than a political or philosophical difference. I don't have to see eye to eye with you in order to love you. If you draw a circle to shut me out, I'm going to draw a bigger circle to shut you in. A joke I heard. A young Irishman had just immigrated to New York. And one day he was trying to figure out how to cross a busy intersection when the light was against him. Now, just a little background. In Ireland, green is Catholics, orange or yellow is Protestants, okay? A policeman stopped, asked the man what the problem was, and the policeman was also Irish, so he was delighted to meet one of his own from the old country. He explained to the newcomer, you cross the street when the light turns green. Aha! The Irishman understood perfectly now. He waited on the corner for a moment. The warning light turned orange just for a second. Then it turned green and stayed that way long enough for the Irishman to walk safely across the street. Safely over there, he turned and waved back at the policeman. And then he shouted, they don't allow the Protestants much time, do they? When you love unconditionally, you have a wide circle. You're not judging everyone to see if they fit into your little box. Your light and love is meant to shine on blacks, whites, Hispanics, Asians, Indians, rich, poor, old, Democrats, Republicans, Protestants, Catholics, Longhorns, Aggies, Jewish, Buddhists, all the mammals of the earth, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea. This is what heaven's going to look like. It's the peaceable kingdom. There's no enmity there. At this moment, I give you a few verses of MC Yogi's song, Give Me Love. Hush, little darling, don't you cry. Every little thing's going to be all right. Don't you worry. Don't you be afraid. Every little thing's going to be okay. Open up your heart and lock the cage. Turn the key and break the chains. Love will always find a way. If you want love, you got to give love, give love, give love away. Love is the best medicine. I shine like Edison whenever I let it in. Love is the power that opens every flower, transforms this coward into a champion. When you're lost, love is sent to remind you, offering signs and providing guidance. Love is infinite and timeless. Just look inside your heart, and that's where you'll find it. Always remember, never forget, what you give is what you get. You want love, you got to give love. Give love, give love away. Love is the answer. Love is the key. Love is the glue between you and me. Just open up your eyes and you will see love is the thing that sets us free. Love is the remedy. Love is the cure. Love is the only thing that will stop the war. It's what everyone is looking for. Then what in the world are you waiting for? Always remember and never forget, what you give is what you get. You want love, you got to give love. Give love away. Love to your mother, love to your father, love to your brother, love to your sons and your daughters, love to your sister and all your friends. Shine your love in all directions, giving and receiving, just like breathing, because living for love gives life meaning. Love is righteous, and it might just save the world from the global crisis. Always remember, never forget, what you give is what you get. You want love, you got to give love. Give love away. Now we come to Martin Luther King. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. In a letter from the Birmingham jail to some moderate clergy who had criticized Martin Luther King for being too extreme. Quote, so the question is not whether we'll be extremists, but what kind of extremists we'll be. Will we be extremists for hate or extremists for love? Will we be extremists for the preservation of injustice or for the extension of justice? In that dramatic scene on Calvary's Hill, 3 men were crucified. You must never forget, they were all crucified for the same crime of extremism. 2 were extremists for immorality, and thus they fell below their environment. The other, Lord Jesus Christ, was an extremist for love, truth, goodness, and thereby rose above his environment. I also hope that circumstances will soon make it possible for me to meet each and every one of you, not as an integrationist or a civil rights leader, but as a fellow clergyman and brother. Let us all hope that the dark clouds of prejudice and hatred will soon pass away from our fear-drenched communities, and in some not too distant tomorrow, the radiant stars of love and brotherhood will shine over our great nation with all their scintillating beauty. We can all say, where would we be without the extreme love of God? When we didn't deserve it, when we made mistakes, Krishna showed us his extreme unconditional love. He's asking us now, this afternoon, to reflect that same love to other people. Don't look at them through the eyes of judgment. Look at them with the eyes of mercy. Well, true, I don't think she should be wearing that in church. That's not appropriate. Maybe not, but I'd rather see her in church than out in the bars and the clubs. And you don't know what she's been through. You haven't walked in her shoes. There is usually a good reason why people are the way they are. You got to get them room while they're in the process of changing. If we're judgmental, holier than thou, looking down on them, that's not going to help them to move forward. That's conditional love. If you meet all my demands, then I'll love you, then I'll accept you. No, Krishna gave his love freely. Let's give ours freely to our brothers and sisters. Don't judge by the exterior. I found that whether I wear a suit or whether I wear blue jeans, it doesn't affect the inner me. My spiritual self is the same, whether I'm wearing cotton or denim. What's really important is the attitude of the heart. So what if they don't look like you, dress like you, act like you? It's all right. They're in a journey. They're not a finished product. Here it is, real simple. Don't judge, and then you won't be judged. You may not understand someone, but you don't have to understand them to love them. You don't have to agree with them in order to accept them. That's why it's called unconditional love. Finishing up here, heard a story about a lady and her husband. They had a dog named Lucky. And whenever they had company for the weekend, they would always warn their guests to make sure they didn't leave their suitcases open, because Lucky loved to sneak in, get something out, and take it down to the basement where his toy box was so that he could play with it later. They were always finding their guests' belongings down there. Time came, the lady was diagnosed with breast cancer. She was in the hospital for 3 weeks. The husband would take Lucky out for his nightly walks, but it just wasn't the same. Lucky loved this lady, stayed with her in the house everywhere she went. She came home after the surgery and she was so weak, she couldn't even make it up the stairs to her bedroom. So she just lay down on the couch. Lucky was right by her side, and you could tell that Lucky did not like the fact that this lady was feeling badly. She eventually dozed off to sleep. She woke up about an hour later. It was hard to breathe. She was hot. She felt all these things poking her, and she began to panic, thinking, what's happening to me? Soon, when she saw what was actually happening, she began to smile and laugh. Lucky had gone down to the basement, got all of his toys, brought them back, placed them on the lady. While she was sleeping, he made trip after trip, trying to make her feel better. Now she was literally covered with his love. That's our challenge to you today. Start covering people with love. It's easy to cover people with judgment, cover them with condemnation, cover them with guilt. Our suggestion is start covering them with love. Love heals. Love brings down barriers. Love puts people back on their feet. You may not understand someone, but that's okay. Have a wide circle of love. Remember, they're on a journey. Where they are is not where they're going to end up. Krishna is counting on us to make a difference. Krishna is counting on us to push forward, to show mercy, counting on us to be understanding, counting on us to give them the benefit of the doubt. If you'll have this unconditional Krishna love, not only will you help others, but your own life will improve with more joy, more peace, more sweetness. If you have this unconditional Krishna love, I believe you'll step into the fullness of your destiny in this life and next life. Go back to home, back to Godhead. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.